Welcome to my channel, The Magic of Java. This is an extract from my first book, The Green Queen from Java. It's a novel, it's a tale, a yarn intended to entertain you. Yes, it does reflect my experience of falling in love with Indonesia, my experience of falling in love with an Indonesian lady, and my increasing awareness of the paranormal and black magic, or some might like to say my descent into madness. But it is just a novel. Any resemblance to real people is completely unintentional. Yes, it's based on my experience, so yes, it's based on people I've met and know, but amalgams or caricatures of them. I do mention real people and real-life celebrities and hope that they, along with anybody who believes they've identified themselves, will forgive me. I next reached what I believed to be my final lesson, at least in this episode, and knew what I needed to do, and that was to offer real forgiveness. I checked things out with Ma, who seemed pleased and encouraged me to act immediately. So I went into the bathroom and told Su Cheung that he was welcome in our home with Ma, his wife and their baby, and that they should be as loving as our family is, and that we could all help each other. He is now sitting on our sofa with Ma, somewhat oblivious to me, as Maddie's mother and Bob had become. If we no longer fear Su Cheung, he no longer holds power over us, and this is our ultimate resolution. Indeed, it is our own fear which spirits exploit and use to enter our psyche. Call it possession if you will. Around a year later, I found that was exactly what Swedenborg recommends doing with evil spirits. I also learned that once we confront our deepest fears, they become nothing, even laughable, and thus it is true with spirits. Whilst in Gunung Maddie's mother and Bob have become close. It is much more profound than this. I welcomed them both into our home. Bob has stayed because I asked him to, and that this must be what Frank knew all along. Having entered us all, there'll always be a little of Su Cheung within us. We will at times feel pains, heat or rheumatism, and we will lose our balance, but we simply need to ignore it as Widati does, and without knowing it, exactly what we do in the West. Our house has already been protected by Pa Angabaya, but now we have a family guarding our home. Balance should be achieved once more. When I say there will always be a little of Su Cheung within us, I have accepted that the soul is fragmented, which explains my view that ghosts can be in many places at the same time. Even that our own souls can not only leave our bodies, but also fragments of them, biolocacy. So while it is possible that if we vacate space by removing a malevolent spirit, we can also allow fragments of our own soul to return. Of course, in not asking Su Cheung to return to Impiety, we have forgiven him and surrounded our home in positive feelings and peace. It has been a lengthy and difficult lesson to learn, but I finally believed we have reached this enlightenment. So it's not about power, it's about knowledge, and a part of this knowledge is that you may have power, but you should not use it, not even for good. That is unless you're absolutely sure that what you are doing is good and not a delusion based on a belief system which allows godlike behaviour. It's so simple. It really is. I found the right way. It led me to you, to my soul. I return, tempered and purified. Do you still know me? Carl Jung from the Red Book. I've come across suggestions which I would not normally by nature embrace, as they're by authors with an evangelical approach to religious doctrine. But they believe that it is not possible to remove ghostly possession only to replace a malevolent possession with a benign. So an alternative theory, which I'm willing to consider, is that if we remove Su Cheung completely, it'll vacate a space that another, possibly malevolent spirit can fill. These authors also claim that shaman, and therefore presumably Dukan, are possessed by such benign spirits, and this would not seem to be negated by my own experience. Certainly I am aware of Dukan Pawangan who have allowed their own souls, batin, to be completely replaced by others, something frowned upon by most followers of Kejauhan. We have found that fasting appears to reduce the malevolent aspects. Are Maddie and I simply encouraging our protectors, Nene and Uncle Norman, to replace Su Cheung? Or is it possible that in befriending Su Cheung and showing compassion, I'm able to transform him from malevolent to benign? Certainly Western spiritualists believe this to be possible, despite often shunning their explanations. It did appear to work to a point. If the observation about shaman is correct, then maybe the reason why Maddie finds Pai Angabaya a little too hands-off, saying that she can fight it herself, is because that he knows the true battle occurring within Maddie and the limits of his power over such a battle. It would also explain why Maddie's mother had insisted that she complete her induction. Certainly Maddie's brother said that he could not help because I was already protected, by whom I presume to be my Uncle Norman. As I am sure that multiple possessions are possible, maybe I'm simplifying things too much, and there are far more spirits to include in my list than Nene, Uncle Norman and Su Cheung. After all, I'm already aware of the presence of Maddie's mother, Frank, Bob, Su Cheung and Ma's baby. But what about Ev, Ma herself, Jeff, Enoch, Mas Kanchara, at least in Bude, and even Nira Rorokidal? Of course, the list is endless, but there are many other presents we are unaware of. If I am right that none of these spirits ever leave us completely, then a degree of conflict is inevitable, as our souls achieve balance, similar to Jung's belief that the dynamic collective consciousness gives rise to everything and contains all polarities, including both the left and right paths. Not completely certain in my revelations, I could not fully appreciate why that very day when Maddie took a pre-Ramadan gift to Pa and Ibu Erte, Pa Erte asked Maddie to take him to our home in Gunung Kidul the next time we visit. At first I thought he wanted to place another item in our home to allow him to send more malevolence there. But later Maddie explained to me that her Nene had told her to always keep some soil with her for protection taken from her birthplace in Gunung Kidul, which he always kept under the bed. When Prama found it, it confirmed his view that Maddie was using black magic against him, and that she was already possessed by many ghosts, having been encouraged to think so by Dukan. Maddie believed that Piety wanted to visit Gunung Kidul to take some soil to gain power over her, unless somebody had told him that Buddy is already there. As I have indicated, I trust Pa Angabaya completely. I was therefore a little disappointed to find that he neither believed that Ma nor Su Cheung could remain in our home in South Jakarta, and by implication, Bob and Jeff could not have visited. He explained to me that the various jimat he had secreted around our home made this impossible. Pa Angabaya was less charitable towards Pa Erte, and what was behind his desire to visit our home in Gunung Kidul. My immediate reaction was somewhat hostile towards Pa Erte, but I know that these are exactly the thoughts I must dismiss from my mind, as these are the thoughts that are channeled in attacks. I also began to realise that no matter how effective my Jimak and Wafak might be, when facing concerted attacks there will always be a way through, and that we need to keep adding to our defences. Whilst I cannot be sure that Ma and Su Cheung have taken up residence, nor had Bob and Jeff visited, I have been aware of their presence, so maybe I have been communicating with them from my home. Certainly I have communicated with them, with all of them, when not in my home, even though I have been aware that they are not following me. This would also explain my real uncertainty regarding Jeff's visit to Indonesia. Although I believe that ghosts may be in many places at the same time, maybe this isn't the case, but they can communicate with multiple people in different locations, seemingly simultaneously, as indeed it is possible for the living to do with digital communications. However, I cannot be sure that Su Cheung is who he claims, and that my revelations have not been sent by whatever force simply to confuse me or to help me, but my lack of knowledge prevents me from seeing their true meaning. Maddie had another explanation, that Ma and Su Cheung are simply in the tree overhanging our house. So yes, we can feel them in our home, but nothing like as strongly as before. Sometime after writing this, I realised what a fool I'd been. Of course Jeff has left. He's back in Southern California looking for drinkers to inhabit, or someone who died addicted to alcohol. That is his eternal fate. Not only could he not find enough alcohol in Gunung Kidul, but also he couldn't on moving to South Jakarta. But he loved me too much to possess me in this way. Had I mistakenly thought that I could show him another life, or should I say death, in Java? But of course it's far too late, for that is his eternal fate is sealed. Or maybe, just maybe, that is why he is so reluctant to find his mother, as he cannot allow her to see what he has become. Although I feel if he did, he might be able to move on. Later, Maddie's mother and Bob told me that Jeff still visits them, and that possibly this will be how he overcomes his addiction. A strange revelation, given that I believe that once dead your fate was sealed, and that you have no free will. God bless you, Jeff. I wish you well in death as I did in life. This would also explain Umba's chain smoking. Despite my reservations about her famous possessors, she could indeed be possessed by an ex-smoker, maybe even someone who died of lung cancer. In fact, many do chain smoke when they drift into this state. In somewhere like Indonesia, there must be many spirits, benign and malignant, happy to do the beckoning of a dukun for some nicotine. Another possible explanation is that I have considered that these events are in the mind. Of course, all could simply be in the mind, but that's not the point I'm making, at least not here. No, what I mean is that Bob was sent to my mind as a test of my honesty and character, although there is also the consideration that could all the ghosts that I have been aware of and my revelations have been sent by a spirit or spirits or some other paranormal force. Most Muslims believe that all my experiences have been sent by jinn, who simply behave as ghosts. However, it seems to me to be a Western preoccupation in creating a paranormal hierarchy of ghosts, demons, lesser gods, Satan, etc. There may even be other entities, possibly legends like Neighbour, who take on the attributes of ghosts of dead people. Certainly Pa Angbaya is non-committal on my visitations and revelations, but I have always been told to go with my feelings, which are very real, so maybe everyone's journey to enlightenment is a personal journey based on their life's experiences and values. Indeed, I believed that I have tapped into what Jung describes as collective unconsciousness. So whilst collective, I am bound to interpret them with reference to my beliefs and my life's experience. This would explain my much more liberal interpretation when compared to Martin's Old Testament God. Do not cry for help if the dead surround you, otherwise the living will take flight, and they are your only bridge to the day. Live the life of the day, and do not speak of mysteries, but dedicate the night to bringing about the salvation of the dead. Carl Jung from the Red Book. Had already mentioned the grave warnings I'd been receiving. Some appeared to come from Frank, who reassured me that my compassion towards Bob had not gone unnoticed, although it occurs to me that in focusing Bob away from revenge and towards happier thoughts provided a lesson for what Maddie and I should be doing. Only 2 days after receiving these warnings, they appeared to be validated. One night, some 2 weeks previously, I slipped on a sarong on the bedroom's polished granite floor. I must have fallen badly, as Maddie found me on the floor, confused and unable to stand. My elbow hit the grooves retaining the wardrobe door in place, and there was blood everywhere. By coincidence, it was the elbow of my left arm. I probably should have gone to hospital to have stitches, but I've already shared with you my view on Indonesian hospitals with you, even though I have no experience of them. Maddie poured betadine on my wound and dressed it. Betadine is an iodine solution used for everything in Indonesia, including the horrific and illegal practice of FGM, performed on at least half of Muslim girls, but is especially prevalent in Aceh, Gorontalo and Sunda. Maddie changed my dressing every day, adding more betadine, until after 2 weeks it appeared dry, although I still applied betadine each day. Then one Sunday evening. Why do medical emergencies always occur on a Sunday evening? I was in pain, and my elbow was swollen to the size of a golf ball, with shades in red and black. Why is it always the size of a golf ball, or the size of whales when describing areas? Mercifully, my elbow was not the size of whales. Titi, who we anticipate will study medicine at university, confirmed my view that this was a serious development, and somewhat unwelcoming added that I needed to go to hospital. Strangely, there'd been no sign of this golf ball swelling that afternoon, although I did become aware of a malevolent force within our kitchen diner. It appeared to be coming from our new cooker, but how could Piety have put something inside it? As I investigated with my left hand, I found the force to be some 10 centimetres away from the cooker, which I simply couldn't explain. Although Maddie had also experienced exactly the same thing in the same spot. Within walking distance of my home in South Jakarta is a good hospital, but I knew it was fairly expensive. So Maddie and I took a taxi to a 24-hour clinic on Jalan RS Fatmawati. The RS meaning Rumah Sakit, or sick house or hospital, one of Jakarta's largest and about the same direction south as we had travelled north, but one which Maddie associates with death, as her only experiences of neighbours dying there. At the clinic, no more than a small office, I waited only 4 minutes to be seen by a young lady doctor. For some reason, I was relieved to find that it was a young lady doctor, as somehow I felt that her qualifications would have been honestly obtained. The doctor explained that she needed to operate immediately to drain the fluids from my golf ball, and so began her cotting and prodding, with the lidocaine seemingly to make no difference to the pain I was experiencing. When finally drained, I was given a further lidocaine injection and stitched back up. I make this part sound simple, but the second injection had no more effect than the first, and I could feel every move of her needle as I writhed and shouted on the couch. This was probably a reflection of cocaine tolerance I had unwittingly developed before coming to Indonesia. Although I was never really that attracted to this particular vice, I could not claim to have tried it once and not inhaled. We were given what medicines could be found at the clinic and a prescription for more, which we managed to cash at a pharmacy that night. The whole procedure and medicines costing no more than $25 and a fair bit of pain. In the taxi, Maddie had said that the discharge was clear as water, and then some thick red blood where the stubborn hard lump had been. But had the discharge been yellow, it would have been much more serious, sepsis, which inevitably it would have become if left. She also explained that the woman's hospital, where Titi and Wadati insisted on going, would have charged 6 times more, but given enough painkillers to sedate even this Bule. Around the same time I was having stitches in my left elbow, so was my father in the UK, who had also fallen badly. Maddie then switched into a caring role, as she did after Prama's stroke, and I relished the intention. The strange thing is that many of the feelings I had in my left arm have now gone. Given that these feelings predate my fall, there is no obvious causal effect here. Bloodletting, cupping and kurokan, coying rubbing so that blood reaches the surface of the skin, are all believed to release evil spirits from the body. So just maybe the draining of my fluids also removed some evil manifestations from my left arm. This may also explain a small proportion of cases of self-harm, as the possessed person has found bloodletting to be effective in releasing the malevolent possession that is disturbing them. The whole of the next day I felt a little sadness, as though I'd lost an old friend. Maybe this is just the shock reaction to being cut open, prodded and sewn up again with seemingly no anaesthetic, although most probably the lidocaine did have an imperceptible euphoric effect on me, even though it's not noted for strong euphoria, which made me a little depressed as it wore off and gave me constipation for 4 days. I thought I'd reached my final point of enlightenment, but there was more, even profound revelation. What I believed to be the evil of Su Cheung that was once within our kitchen was our own cumulative evil. Our negative thoughts, fear, jealousies, greed, revenge, aggression, machismo, lies and cheating combined in our home. This is the very reason why, if you are good, black magic can not harm you. It's only a reflection of your own failings. I'd never fully appreciated in Kijoan why there is no good and evil, but of course that's it. The good and evil in the world, or hell, is your own good and evil. Remove the evil from yourself and you begin to remove the evil from this world. If we have free will, including the possessed, then every struggle is an internal struggle. We may find it useful to blame evil people, ghosts, jinn or the devil, but real evil resides in us all and can be overcome. We need to both repent and forgive ourselves. For Maddie and I, this is best achieved via Allah, but it can be within ourselves if this is easier and we resist feeling godlike. To a Muslim, this is the true meaning of the word jihad. Although I use the word evil, I prefer very bad, as I find evil too difficult a concept to contemplate. By the end of this yarn, I realised how profound these thoughts were. Unwittingly, on 2 occasions, we'd behaved in a godlike manner based on a belief system. What we did, few would consider a sin, and I'm sure Allah will forgive us. Nevertheless, we gave the forces we were battling with exactly what they needed, setting back our attempts to drive them away considerably. Logically, the obverse to this thought is that good or love can change our trajectory. I have begun to send love to Paerte with the thought that Maddie and I have more than enough to share. I do this by thinking of the abundance of love between Maddie and I and breathe in. Then I exhale onto my right hand, pointing in his direction. I also ask Su Cheung to share in our love and that we are there to help him. This goes beyond simple forgiveness. I had found useful but inconclusive. But rather unexpectedly, as I believed things were drawing to a close, Uni re-entered the frame again. Maddie dreamt that he had placed a light above our house, which was heating water and causing warming of our house. She always managed to break the light and thwart Uni, but was obviously disturbed. Both Maddie and Titi now felt a new attack, first in their lower back, then stomachs, and finally poking them all over their bodies. I felt my powers, as I've told them, were going, but Maddie and Titi needed my help. Earlier that night, I'd removed some of Su Cheung from Maddie, but she was still being tormented. So I tried once more. Eventually, I realised there was also another presence. I sent him back to Uni, explaining that we were full of love and wished no harm to anyone. I went outside, and whilst I could not inspect our roof, the presence was felt the most stronger by Titi's room. The nearest to Uni's is Impiety, who had also noticed something which we told her to forget. I now realise that Impiety and Uni had worked in tandem against Mina, possibly hoping to gain from her desire to sell our home quickly or abandon it. Whilst Mina was focusing on Uni, her problems were also coming from Impiety in the other direction. So we had seemingly stepped into a historic cycle of greed and jealousy. The reader will have already concluded that I'm no Agatha Christie, but would be forgiven for believing that I have left my observations for dramatic suspense. The fact that you're already ahead of me in your thinking simply reflects my mind being slow and preoccupied with attacks designed to confuse me. Uni, Pa and Impiety must have been trying to buy and sell Impiaty's family home for years, scaring or killing off the owners with black magic, only to try and buy it back at a discount price or for nothing. The 3 deaths that even Maddie's brother-in-law in Chillamsham knew about are probably the tip of the iceberg for someone who has committed Pesugian. Their fate is sealed. They must see it through or pay the forfeit of those they have invoked. Our neighbours in the compound must know everything about it, but are too frightened of Impiety's power as compound head and supernatural power, even his possession, to ever speak out, which probably also means that Mass Predictor is aware of his plans before proposing to Bude, maybe even a part of them. But any prospective home buyer would have been warned off buying the house should they make inquiries with the neighbours, not something Maddie would do when she was so desperate to leave Brahma. Whilst Uni and Impiety probably never forgave Mina for not selling the house to them at a discount price, Impiety could not believe her luck when she saw a Bule visiting. So she welcomed us so nicely. They could pull scams on me for years, especially if they could keep me in the UK by holding up my marriage and therefore my residence, draining me of money and resolve prior to launching their main plan to get her home back. We relied on an official from outside from the Kelurahan, the lowest formal level of government in Indonesia, who was a good friend of Andy's, to sort out the mess Impiety had left our Nika in. But at the time, Impiety requested and was refused my mother's maiden name and photo. Both would have greatly assisted in using black magic against me. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all lies you can invent. William Blake, Auguries of Innocence. Uni and Impiety appear to work on a 5-year cycle, as the forces that they have made a Pesugian pact with will demand blood on the very least 5-year basis. If they're unable to deliver, they run the risks of being their lives which are forfeited. This interpretation was reinforced by dreams of both Maddy and Bude had about Impiety starving a grey cat to death, meaning that he needs to be offered blood very soon. Unknown to Pa and Impiety, or possibly not given their official role, the whole of the kampung and its access road is wanted for development by many of Jakarta's developers. After all, land prices will rocket once the MRT is opened. Such development is identified in the MRT's annual report 2013, where our kampung forms a part of the city design guidelines of MRT Jakarta's Corridor 1. A conservative projection calculates 20 to 30 years of development, as a number of projects would have to go through land consolidation processes that typically takes a longer time in order to reach agreement with relevant stakeholders. Of course, it is simply coincidence, but the access road and some critical land plots are owned by an independent school. 2 of their Western teachers were jailed following being accused and found guilty of paedophilia, in spite of the evidence against them being dubious to an English court, although undoubtedly the judges had other considerations that I am unaware of. So there we have it: greed, criminality, murder and black magic, collectively called business in Bahasa. Whilst our experiences may be unusual, it is far from unique in Indonesia, as sharp practices at the top permeate every aspect of society and are replicated all the way down the social strata. My reference to Agatha Christie is intuitive, as it allows the Western reader to comprehend what I have experienced. But all this is a camera obscura to a much darker forces at play. The desire to make money from our house is tangible and real and can be comprehended by the Western mind, but the actual struggle and motivation are much more difficult to explain. At this stage, it's enough to say that Omuni and Impiety have entered a Faustian pact to kill people in return for wealth. My use of the word Faustian is well chosen, as Marlowe's Faustus was based on Sir John Dee, a central figure in the development of British occult. Indonesian readers will be confused by my choice to live in Jakarta and Gunung Kidul, when I could have brought my Indonesian family to Manchester with its golden streets and abundance of wealth. They will say that I have been unlucky, even foolhardy, and should have bought a home somewhere else, probably Tangerang, Banten. As an expat indeed suggested years after writing this, and that Gunung Kidul is the last place a Bule should build a home in. But of course, this simply proves the point I've already made. It's the equivalent of being told there's a better route after you've already arrived somewhere, or the product they recommended was not the best choice after you had bought it. It's a useless piece of information which only serves to obscure the truth of what is actually happening. But then, in the UK, an Indonesian would probably be told to live in London or a large city where they're much more likely to be a victim of racism, for some reason, along with Northamptonshire, rather than rural areas like Lincolnshire or North Yorkshire, where such incidences are much rarer. Have I been unlucky in finding myself living next to a psychopathic mass murderer? Well, in the West, such people are institutionalised, but in Indonesia they're as likely to be celebrated as patriots. Most of my middle-class pre-boomy friends have experienced similar issues to me, maybe not quite as ferocious and persistent, but such things are commonplace in Indonesia, as is the collective silence on wrongdoing. Many Bules who've spent long in Indonesia will have experienced something similar to me. Few will have realised that their misfortune is related to black magic. Some will have returned home either ill or impoverished, and probably both. Fewer still will have died in Indonesia. But even the few who suspected black magic will have not have begun on the journey to uncover the shameful truth that I have done. But maybe a few, even Ibu Ani's ex-husband, may have realised, but no one in the rest believe or comprehends them as they sink into dementia. Yes, I have unwittingly stumbled upon Summer Isle, and just as Sergeant Howie began to realise the evil is not restricted to Lord Summerdale, there will be a collective responsibility in indifference and silence towards his fate. Our friend from Kelurahan described this indifference as tiredness, an Indonesian term meaning cannot be bothered to get involved. But I see it as them being fed up with our struggle. They simply want us to die quickly and without fuss so that they can get on with their lives. Well, I hope you enjoyed this chapter. By all means, feel free to comment on it, including criticism, as that's the only way I can improve. Now, I really do hate it when channels keep badgering you to subscribe for them. But I suppose it does tell you when I'm going to post new chapters. I'm aiming to do this every week to 10 days, so it might be a good idea to subscribe if you want to. But thank you again for listening.